Tonight, Jim Gordon finds the body of George Washington just lying in an alley somewhere. Green Arrow begins his transformation into a full-blown werewolf, and Telos continues to be Telos. Who says that DC editorial is out of touch? All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 227 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it is the first episode of the new year. Woo, yay, hooray. I will say it's a little bit extra special because, as I pretty much say every episode now, first episode of the last year as well. We are finally approaching the final countdown, less than 25 episodes to go. I would say I'm bittersweet, looking forward to it. It's nice that I'm going to be able to say I did this. I finally read through all of those books I collected with absolutely no intention of reading them. But, what am I supposed to do with my Tuesdays now? That being said, I'm going to briefly mention this here. I'll mention it more as we get into the run-up. There is a leap year 10 years ago, 2016, which means that if I am doing this on the day that the comics actually get released, it has been and will be up until the end of February, Tuesday, but after that leap day 10 years ago, this show is going to be shifted back to Mondays. So if anybody watches this the day it comes out, Mondays. So anyway, what do we got coming up this week? This week, very light. Very, very light. Only 9 comics came out, and only 2 of them are really worth mentioning in any specific capacity, but I'll get there. In terms of the books in alphabetical order, we have Action Comics, Batman Beyond, Detective Comics, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Midnighter, Swamp Thing, Telos, and our weekly series, Batman and Robin Eternal. So Swamp Thing, I put a little bit of oomph on there because that is a brand new number 1 that is written by Len Wein and Kelley Jones, and I talk about it more in the review itself, but it's very late 80s, early 90s. It has that feel to it, so definitely check that out if you were into classic Swamp Thing. Action Comics is the next part of the Savage Dawn crossover that was originally in Superman Annual number 3, like last week. And Green Arrow is specifically beginning the arc that was promised from the last Green Arrow Annual. So I think that was like 3 months ago. If you haven't been keeping up, go check out the last Green Arrow Annual. It basically is the setup for everything in this arc. It's not super necessary, but it's a good little primer for it. But beyond that, everything else is pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and jump into what is hopefully a mercifully short episode, and we'll lead off with probably the event comic of Action Comics. Action Comics number 48, written by Greg Pak and Aaron Kuder, art by Aaron Kuder and Rafa Sandoval. So last issue, we're continuing on with the Savage Dawn stuff that started last issue, where Vandal Savage, as Superman was feeling all emo about not having his powers and the Justice League kind of like brushing him off and saying like, oh, it's too big of a thing for you. Vandal Savage has the Stormwatch carrier and he's crashed into the watchtower and he's killed a whole bunch of people. So we see Superman's leaping around town trying to save as many people as humanly possible as the watchtower is colliding with the Stormwatch carrier. We see that all of the Justice League have been captured and are having their powers drained from them, like their energy or whatever. All except for Wonder Woman, who is still able to get around and talk, and she's telling Superman all this, like, hey, look, we're not leaving our friends behind, we're gonna go save them, Clark, but like, you gotta help. And he's like, you should get away absolutely right now. Like, if they could drain my powers, you're not safe either. And then immediately Frankenstein, who was turned evil by wrath, gets a hold of Wonder Woman and they start draining her as well. So Vandal Savage calls down to Superman, just being like, yeah, it makes it like none of this would have been possible if I didn't take your powers first. So I really got to thank you for that. And Superman's like, oh my god, he's teamed up with all the people from across all the super books, and he's gonna fight against, but why are they doing this? And so he just asks Vandal, like, what are you planning? And he's like, I'm not gonna tell you. No way. And he's like, whatever, I'm gonna stop you. He's like, no, see, here's the thing. Every time you stop someone from doing something, you're just maintaining the status quo. I'm here to change it. I wanna make the world different, and maybe being different will make it so it doesn't need to be saved so goddamn every day. And Clark calls him out saying, like, you're just talking about being like a dictator. Even if your noble intentions or whatever, you just want to be a dictator. He's like, maybe, but regardless, things are about to change. And he just starts firing off laser beams from the Stormwatch carrier all over the place. It hits a few like jets, building stuff like that. And specifically one jet, pilot ejects out of it. His parachute doesn't open, and Superman has to leap in and save them from hitting the ground. And he's like, well, I saved one guy, and like 100 other people are dying currently in the city. It's tearing me apart how this is happening. So at this point, Wrath comes up and is like, hey, I thought that we were not going to be like killing so many people. Why are you attacking them all? And he's like, shut up. You failed entirely over in your book. Superman 100% stopped you. I don't need to listen to you. So he starts firing off the Black Wrath bomb goo things that were set up in that storyline all over the Earth, seemingly, or at least close by. It's everywhere there. Superman jumps up, and I guess they're in San Francisco because we're on the Golden Gate Bridge. A bus is about to plummet off the side. He goes to grab it, but there's a patch of ice and he starts to slip. And as the bus is about to fall, all of a sudden, he gets caught. He has like what seems to be a golden lasso around his ankle. And he's like, Diana, you're safe. But nope, it's actually just an energy construct from Stargirl and the rest of the Justice League United and also Steel. And so they all pop in. They're ready to start doing whatever. We see that Superman notices all the black mass stuff coming out, the black goo, and there's like, well, we've taken some samples and this isn't the exact same stuff that Wrath used, so it might be okay. No one's going insane. And Superman's like, no, just give it time. We get a cutaway where a little kid is trying to look out the window of a plane as all this is going on. He has to climb over the lap of a man to like see it, and the man gets all pissed off at the kid, and then the plane blows up. I don't know. Plane's in danger. That's all we really get out of it. So we see Clark meets up with Lana and Steel and Ray Palmer, strangely enough. And Lana's just grateful to see Clark after everything else. And he's like, yep, no, totally. Hey, remember in the last issue, in the annual, we talked about how you had a secret weapon that you were building that was super dangerous? Time to break out the weapon. And they go back and forth over and over again on whether or not he can use it, because it is apparently based on the original Metallo armor, which means that it is entirely run off of kryptonite. So it will slowly kill him, but not like as fast as it would if he were fully powered. So Ray Palmer also shows off his growing and shrinking tech, because that's just what he does. We see that the plane has crashed. It exploded. Well, a bunch of firefighters are there trying to put it out, when all of a sudden this man completely on fire starts coming out, or this man who is on fire but not affected by it, I should say, comes out of the fire, and he just calls them idiots as he walks off. We see that the super team, which consists of some Justice League United like flying members, Superman wearing a flight suit, jetpack, however you want to call it. He's all jumping in, and everyone's just deferring to him. Like, this is Superman's show. Let's all do what he says. So we see live on TV, the fire guy has some sort of cybernetic implants. Vandal's watching this, and he's like, perfect. This is absolutely great. And Rat's just like, wait a minute, hold on. That guy just killed like 24 people. What are you talking about? This is not what we wanted. And Vandal just backhands her and says, like, I'm hoping more people will die, especially out of like my little group of Vandal Savage descendants, because you're all so goddamn weak. We then get an alert, intruders on the ship. Obviously, it's Team Superman, and they just start flying towards, dodging lasers, doing what they can. Vandal tells them, look, this is a super highly effective ship. Just blow them out of the sky. And seemingly they do. And they're just like, all right, cool. Now bring me the bodies, because I'm not going to believe it otherwise. But at that exact moment, Frankenstein looks down at his hand, and there's a bright light as out of the quantum verse or whatever comes Superman and team. They shrunk down subatomically to sneak in, and now they start fighting through. So, I think it's Superman he's going to go rescue the League while he puts everyone else in charge of getting the shields down and taking out Vandal and all that. Superman immediately flies down to where the League is being held and starts taking off all their like power draining collars, but he only ends up getting to Wonder Woman, who's like, hey, that suit, it's got kryptonite, it's killing you. And he's like, long story, we'll deal with it later. So Vandal shows up and is just like, hey, yeah, I've got your power because you guys have wasted it for generations, and now I'm just going to kill you with it. And they're all just like stunned for a second. However, everything goes black, and suddenly they're gone. Like they just disappear. And in comes Wrath, who's like, I can't believe you lied to me, Father. You betrayed me. I thought we were going to be bringing out the best in people, letting them fight for themselves. But no, you're just looking for the worst. And she ends up causing this huge explosion on the side of the Stormwatch carrier. Everyone else is looking on like, oh, geez, all right, is that a good thing? But then Hodor Root is like, oh, this is my chance, and he immediately shocks the entire Justice League United and takes them all prisoner as well. So Superman and Wonder Woman get away. They have this little scene of them crashing down to re-entry as the Stormwatch carrier starts to repair itself. And Hoarder gets over the line and says, hey, yeah, we lost Superman and Wonder Woman, but we got like 6 more Leaguers, most of which have powers. So net gain, technically. And it's all just revealed of like, all right, now with that power increase, you have everything you need for the final strike, Lord Savage. And that's the issue. I don't know. I like it. I know I like it. I'm coming down on this way too hard with my pausing, but like I do enjoy this issue. I think it's well written, well paced. It's got a lot to it. I guess I don't know. It feels so much like we're already in the end game. You know, I know we've been setting up this Vandal Savage stuff across all the books for so long, like across all of the things since DCU basically began, but it's weird that the event just started, and it starts with a bang. Don't get me wrong, the Watchtower stuff, but like, it feels like this is already like, oh no, our heroes are at their lowest, and they're going to have to turn around and like make this big hurrah in the next issue and finally save the day. But we got like 4 more issues, I think, minimum. So I don't know. It just feels weird that we're already at this point. But I like it. I like what this issue does. I like the way it handles things. The Wrath is true to her character, what little we got set up with it in previous issues. So overall, positive. I think I'm going to say this one is I'll give it an 8. It's almost a 7.5, but I'm going to bump it up to the 8 because I am actually, curious of what we're doing here. It's got my interest, which is exactly what an event book should be doing at this point. Swamp Thing #1, written by Len Wein, art by Kelley Jones. So, yeah, this is obviously we had the Swamp Thing at the beginning of New 52. This is the next volume following that, 6-issue mini, and it feels so 80s to 90s. Because obviously Kelley Jones was very strong Batman artist around that time. Len Wein created Swamp Thing, more or less. So, yeah, this is a throwback. We basically spend the entire first half of this issue just kind of getting associated with Swamp Thing, his whole deal. We show we're down in Louisiana Bayou, and we just get like cuts to different herons, toads, alligators, stuff like that. And then we get Swamp Thing, who's just been standing there, still as a rock for ages, seemingly. And we see the flashback to the beginning of his story. He was Alec Holland, scientist. His lab caught on fire, chemical explosion, ran into the swamp, and then after some period of time, he came out as the Swamp Thing. Or rather, something came out as the Swamp Thing, believing it to be Alec Holland. So at this point, as he's just kind of reminiscing, Alligator ends up trying to attack him, starts attacking. And Swamp Thing's like, are you serious? Really? Right now? With me? So he starts fighting against the alligator. It gets a chomp out of his shoulder, which he immediately regenerates. And he's like, all right, that just annoys me and you're ticking me off. So he ends up picking up the alligator, like prying its jaws apart. And he's like, I could easily snap your jaws right now if I wanted to. But I'll be honest, you got some fight in you. I like that. So he instead brings down some vines and says that these vines could squish you into a million bits, but I won't. And he just throws the alligator like half a mile away. It lands in the swamp and it swims away. And he's like, yeah, and you better not come back or else you may not be lucky. And so he resumes just moving his way through the swamp. And as he's going through, he realizes, or he talks to the audience and says, yeah, I'm kind of happy with my life here, everything's more calm because I've basically just been ignoring the Parliament of Trees. I haven't been answering anything they want me to do because they've been all paranoid and whatnot. And then a voice comes out of nowhere and says, oh, well, they're pretty angry about that, all the stuff that you've been doing. And he's like, oh, who's that? Oh, of course, I should have known it was you. And we cut over and show the Phantom Stranger has shown up. And he says, hey, look, there are changes in the wind that may make a future nightmare for you. And one thing just calls him out, like, why do you always talk like that? Why has everything got to be riddles? Why can't you just, speak normally? And he's like, look, I'm just telling you what's going on here. The Green's not happy that you've been ignoring them. And, aren't you happy to be the Swamp Thing? Aren't you glad that you're Earth's avatar of the Green? And he's like, no, I'd like to spend one more minute as a man rather than a million years as a plant. And Phantom Stranger basically says, oh, be careful what you wish for. There's unintended consequences coming out of that. But then all of a sudden, something happens. Something that distracts Swamp Thing, and Phantom Stranger just disappears. So Swamp Thing hears a noise from down deeper in the bayou. It's a cry out for help, so he rushes out. We see a woman is stretching out trying to reach her husband that has fallen into quicksand, and he is very quickly falling under. So Swamp Thing just wades his way out there, grabs hold of him, and they both end up going under. Woman starts freaking out, but then all of a sudden Swamp Thing raises up and is like, oh, I got him, I got your husband. So he sets the husband down. The wife starts caring for him, and then Swamp Thing's like, all right, well, that wasn't your fault, but be more careful out here in the swamp. Anyway, bye. And he starts walking off, and they're like, wait, hold on. The whole reason we were here was that we wanted to meet up with you. And he's like, what are you talking about? And they say, well, we're Frank and Grace Wormwood, and we've got a story that you probably wouldn't even believe. And he's like, doubt it. So turns out they are just a normal family, whatever. They have a son named Laszlo, and Laszlo started going to a very liberal arts college. And it's so liberal in that it's bordering on non-sciences, including a class that is the life of study, or the study of life after death. So he's in this class, Laszlo is, and there's a professor named Professor Crisp who essentially wants to kill one of the students and then immediately revive them for the sake of the course. And Laszlo, being a timid little boy, is kind of forced into it. So they kill him, but then they're unable to resuscitate him, and he's stuck in a coma. And they try everything, but eventually the parents are like, all right, let's pull the plug. Let's give our son some peace. And as soon as they go to pull the plug, as soon as they make that decision, they find his hospital room empty. And then the next morning, Professor Crisp has not only been killed, but he has been torn apart and strewn all over the entire university. And so we get back to the modern day, and Frank is like, yeah, we think our son is the one doing this. We're not stupid. We recognize that happening. And the whispers saying that Laszlo is doing that are the same ones that say you are a defender of the swamp. And since the university technically borders a swamp, we were wondering if you could get in there. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'll see what I can do. So he gets to the university. We see that everyone's on edge. Everyone's freaking out. And it's very dark. There's no lampposts or anything like that, until finally 2 students who were in Laszlo's class are cornered by this husk of a man looking thing, this dark creature, and he's calling them out, being like, oh, you did this to me, why did you not spare me, blah blah blah. And they're like, oh, look, it was luck of the draw, it could have been any of us in that chair. But they're both held up by their necks, and he's saying, oh, you will share my pain. And that's where Swamp Thing comes in, saying oh, Laszlo, I've been looking for you, you got to stop this. And then he just snaps both their necks, and Swamp Thing's like, okay, well, now we got problems. So finally, the full moon comes out. We're getting a good look at Laszlo, and Swamp Thing comes to the realization of, oh, he's not just your average, ordinary, kid who has some dark arts or whatever put on him. He's a full-blown zombie. And this version of zombie means extremely strong and extremely fast as well. So he charges after Swamp Thing, and he's just like, hey, look, you can try to fight me, but it ain't gonna work. But then he gets his hands around Swamp Thing's neck, and he's like, oh, damn, you're actually way stronger than I give you credit for. So he breaks out of Laszlo's grip, starts throwing punches. He then is like, all right, Laszlo, I'm not here to fight you, though. I'm here to, take you down so we can deal with this. And so he wraps some roots around Laszlo. Laszlo's like, I can break out of this. He's like, no, you can't. He's like, watch me. And he snaps out of him. And Swamp Thing's like, look, I just want to take you back to your parents. And he's like, no, anyone from them. I'll kill you. You can't stop me. So he charges at Swamp Thing, and he comes so fast that he's able to just shove his hand through Swamp Thing's chest. And he's just like, damn, all right, that's a problem. But then he starts like pulling apart. And Swamp Thing's like, if I don't stop this guy, he's actually going to rip me in half. And then he does. And Swamp Thing's left just lying in two halves on the ground as Laszlo runs off to go do whatever his zombie stuff is. He did say at one point that there's 2 more people that he needs to kill. So I guess that's the plot. Yeah. I mean, again, it feels so like late 80s, early 90s. The art style to it, the writing of it, pacing, everything just feels like not a modern comic. There's not like a downbeat panel in this whole thing. Everyone is filled with, I wouldn't say like overindulgent dialogue or like huge text boxes, but like there is also a third person omniscient narrator this whole time. That's not a thing you see anymore. Almost all comics are the main character is the narrator. So I like it. I think it's very well done. It's very well drawn. I will say I have a soft spot for the previous Swamp Thing run. So this one does have a little bit extra that it has to overcome to get me to view it as like great, but it's got a good start. So yeah, I'm going to say this one definitely gets at least an 8. I hesitate to go 8.5 this early on, but I'm very interested in this series. It's done some good work so far, so we'll see where it all turns out. It's only got 6 issues to make it last though, so here's hoping. Detective Comics number 48, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Fernando Pasarin. So kind of the start of a new arc. We had the Robin War thing for last issue, so this one's completely separated from that. We open up with an old style pistol, like the flintlock pistol being loaded up, and someone is talking about how it's the discipline of an army that makes it count. It's not the size or the scale, it's discipline specifically. So then we cut over to a bunch of windows in some Gotham building. They're all happy families inside doing whatever. And Jim Gordon, Batman, is standing on the opposite rooftop just watching them. And he's like, this is why I do it. This is making sure they can all get back to their homes to be able to sleep. I need to make sure I'm justified in that. And he specifically locks on to a dad reading to his daughter a bedtime story before kissing her goodnight. And then I don't know who initiates the call. I think Jim does, but he calls up Barbara and is like, hey, how's it going, sweetie? How you doing? And she's like, oh, it's good, Dad. You know, just relaxing, whatever, what's going on? And of course, he's out as Batman. She's out as Batgirl. They're both doing their thing, but they're both pretending. Like, Jim's like, oh, yeah, you know, I'm just heading straight to bed after the game. You know, that's that. What are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm out with my friends about to see a movie. And meanwhile, she's kicking a mugger in the face. So at that point, he's like, oh, yeah, well, I better get going. You enjoy your friends. Bye. We see that there is a gunshot that rings out, and Gordon notices it, but he says it sounded weird. It didn't sound like a normal pistol here in Gotham. Something's weird about it. So he goes running over rooftops. It's raining, so he almost loses his footing, and he's just like, yeah, that's what I get for using the robot so much. But he eventually gets down to the alleyway where it was, and laying dead in the alley is George Washington. Just like straight up George Washington. And he reaches down for a pulse and he's like, all right, well, this is weird, but he got shot in the heart, so that's happening. And he can smell that the gunpowder's in the air. He's like, okay, that means it just happened, which means the shooter's still nearby. I need to be on my guard. And then immediately Gordon gets shot in the head. However, he's wearing the cowl, so he's seemingly okay. He reaches for his Batarang gun, pulls it out, fires off some shots down the alley, but eventually he collapses and he calls up Julia and Daryl up in the blimp and just like, hey, I'm not okay. I got a concussion. You're going to need to come and get me. So he passes out. Julia rappels down from the blimp, picks him up, pulls him up, and is just like, okay, well, that happened. And Daryl's like, what do you see down there? What happened down there? She's like, looks like George Washington died in this alley. So we then cut over to a cemetery that's all boarded up because they literally ran out of space. And we see this figure walking through, and he has the face of George Washington. He looks like him. And he starts taking off his clothes, and he reaches for a Batarang that's embedded in his shoulder. And this whole time, he's just doing a monologue, this whole long thing about like, mankind when left to themselves are unfit for government and blah, blah, blah. It's just, don't worry about it. But we see that as he gets the batarang out, he stands in front of a wall, which the best I can describe it is, it's that wall of the faceless men from Game of Thrones, whatever they were called, where it's just tons of masks, all just the masks hanging up. And so he takes off the George Washington one, and we can't see what he actually looks like, but he puts it back up, and then there's another man who is bound and gagged inside of this guy's house. And he basically says, like, oh, yeah, it's been a long time coming here. And he's talking about, like, the first one. Yeah, I'll just read it. The first one I hit pretty flush with one hand, went about 200 yards. The second one I shanked, and it rolled into a crater about 40 yards away. So, like, it sounds like he's talking about golf or something, but, like, I don't know. And he's just shaving this guy and preparing him and saying, like, well, maybe I'm a piece of history after all. So then we cut to the morgue. It's just Jim Gordon and Harvey Bullock. And they're looking over George Washington here. And he's just like, all right, well, he turns out he actually was like a firefighter. He has all these bravery citations here, but there's nothing to suggest he was ever in any sort of like bad gangs or anything like that. And yeah, we dug out of his body an old musket ball. So it was actually a flintlock pistol that did this. But we also found the one that hit you, Jim, and it wasn't steel. It wasn't something to break through. It was a rubber ball, the same ones that like SWAT teams use to disperse crowds. So, it hit you, gave you a concussion because of the speed of it, but it wasn't actually intent on killing you. And they do some more investigation, and Jim notices there's an incision on the leg. And as far as I could tell, they're saying that it literally took out his femur, which seems ridiculous from the small hole, but maybe they're just talking about like a bit of it. Maybe they're just talking about like a tiny section of the femur. So either way, Bullock makes the request of like, hey, could you like take off the mask when we're down here? And he's like, yeah, sorry, no problem. And they continue talking, and basically just like, okay, well, what do we got? Like with everything here, what's going on? And Bullock's like, well, we've got a lot of legwork, and you're going to do whatever Batman does. And then Bullock turns around and Jim's gone, and he's like, except for that, God damn it. So Gordon's like, I gotta admit, that felt good. I like being able to do that. But he runs up to the roof because apparently he got a call from the blimp. And it's an emergency. Batman's needed immediately. So he runs up, grabs hold of a ladder, climbs inside, and they're just like, yeah, we're maneuvering this blimp through the buildings because of how fast we have to get there. At the top of Wayne Tower, there is a parachuter that is stuck up there. So we gotta go up and get him down before something happens. He unhooks and like ends up falling to his death. And as they get closer, they say, oh, something like this is just as weird as George Washington, because the one hanging up there is like an old-timey NASA astronaut. So, yep, that's that. The beginning of a new arc where Gordon's having to fight against a lot of old historical figures, I guess. It's called the Bronze Age, the arc overall. I'm down with the name, but I'm just curious what it's actually going to result in. As for the villain, I have no idea. It may be a pre-existing one, might be someone new. I do like... What's the best way to put this? The Bullock arc, where we were focusing on all that like Bullock stuff and not so much Jim, felt like it didn't really work in hindsight. Then we got, I believe it dovetailed into... What did it dovetail into? I remember Robin War's most recent issue. I can't even remember what was before that, but that just shows how much it wasn't working. This one, to me, feels like if we were to keep Jim Gordon around as Batman, this is the sort of thing that we would have. Like, this feels like it is actually going down that path of, okay, he is Batman. What do we do with that? And we just treat this like another detective story. We don't compare it to like, oh yeah, well, I haven't been Batman for that long, and that's all this stuff I need to overcome. Like, no. Just treat him like he is Batman. That's all we need to like move forward down that path. So I like it for that point of view, even if we all know it's not going to last. Beyond that, art-wise, pretty good. Can't really complain about anything there. Pacing-wise, same. So it was overall solid issue. I think I'll say 7.5, and the only thing that's keeping me from an 8 is the dialogue from the villain himself. Maybe it'll make more sense once like we get a name or a motivation or something, but it just left me feeling like I was missing something in my reading. Like if I said it in a different inflection, I would get it. It's just too confusing as it stands now, but 7.5 still very good. Green Arrow number 48, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Patrick Zircher. So we had an annual, maybe about like 3 months ago now at this point, where it was setting up this big guy who has a new disease called Leukos. His name is Merrick. There's apparently a whole group of people with this disease, and it essentially is a werewolf disease. Basically, they put it in more scientific terms than that, but that's what it is. Green Arrow gets bitten by Merrick, and now he's infected with Leukos. That was 3 months ago. We finally get the follow-up on that, where Arrow's waking up in the dead of night. He wakes up screaming, and he's been dealing with this disease in his system now for a few weeks at the very least. And he wakes up screaming from like the nightmares of Merrick and all that stuff, but he's knows that he doesn't feel normal anymore. And so we see that he is climbing up this side of this mountain. He's out in like a very wintry terrain sort of area because he wants to get away from it all, away from the central city. Emiko is emailing him saying like, hey, what's going on? Get back here. Like, I know you're hiding something. And he's like, well, truth is, I never felt better because this Leukos disease is not debilitating. It like pumps up your adrenal system and it pumps up your pituitary so that you just like have this animal in you that's let out. On top of that, it raises your senses and your physicality. So like you're able to do all these other things. And he's just saying like, I'm basically almost a werewolf now. So he's out with George and they're looking for this buck to go hunting for it, looking for food. And as they start going through the woods, he's like, standing next to the rest of the Justice League, I'm just doing it with a bow. I never considered myself exceptional. But with this disease, I feel like I could finally stand among them. Like I have that level of heightened senses. And as he's making his way through the snow, he notices human footprints. And he's like, that's weird. There shouldn't be anyone else around here. But regardless, he sees the buck. He ends up killing it and bringing it back to his cabin for stringing it up for food. We see that there's another guy there named Norton, who I guess is the caretaker of this cabin. The Queen family owns this and all the land surrounding it, but Norton takes care of it. And Norton is a little bit bruised up. He's got some scratches on his face, stuff like that. And Arrow's like, hey, you wear glasses usually. What happened to him? You look a little banged up. He's like, oh yeah, I slipped on some ice. Don't worry about it. And they talk about how Norton had a son. And Oliver's like, I'm so sorry to hear that he died. Like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, he got sick, and it is what it is. But then they hear noises outside. Oliver steps out, and he's like, damn, something got into the deer. And he had this thing strung up like to some heavy wooden posts, and it's just completely gone now and dragged off. And he's like, all right, well, something, maybe a bear or whatever. But then he asked Norton, like, hey, by the way, the other night, did you hear like a screaming or anything? And he's like, nah, nothing like that. And maybe it's wolves out there. So we see that he goes back to, I guess, a separate cabin that he lives in. And he gets a call from Broderick, who's saying, hey, you got to make it back over to Civilization. We got this whole product line we're trying to launch, and it's super important for the company. And he's like, I just can't do it. I've got a problem. Are you okay, Broderick, though? Because you keep on making these little wincing noises. And it shows that Broderick is currently in the middle of like a BDSM session where he's getting whipped by a dominatrix. And Oliver's like, look, I can't make it to the meeting. I'm going through some personal stuff. And Broderick's just like, yeah, we all go through personal stuff. Other people just deal with it in more secretive ways. And yeah, that's more than I need to know about Broderick. But regardless, Oliver gets off the phone. He looks out the window and he sees this dark figure there with wolf eyes. And he's like, oh, something out there. Got to go deal with it. So he grabs his Green Arrow stuff and he heads out there. And as he looks out, he sees human prints on the ground where it was standing. And he's like, hey, are you okay? If you are human, like I can get you food or shelter, like I can help, because he thinks this is someone else with Leukos, like advanced Leukos. But in the early stages, like he has, it's nowhere near as monstrous as this creature is. So he goes back inside, decides to pick it up the next morning, but a huge snowstorm has happened in the meantime, basically clearing off all the tracks. So he just starts skiing up, hiding up to the top of the mountain. We see there is a couple there who he immediately draws his bow because he's all tensed up, a bit more anxious and paranoid. And the people are like, oh, hey, whoa, we were just skiing down. We got lost. Our GPS ran out of batteries. Like, we're just trying to get back to our car. Please don't shoot us. And Oliver just pulls out some batteries and says, okay, here you go. So they move on their way. And then George the dog uncovers a secret lair of some sort. And it's buried in the snow. They go down underneath to take a look at what it is. And in there is a chair with wrappings around the wrists and legs, along with Norton's glasses. And he's like, well, I guess I know who to ask now. So Oliver quickly skis back down to the cabin. We see the doors busted in. He goes in. Norton is worse for wear, but still alive. And he's like, I lied. My son is still alive. But he got sick. He has the Leuko's disease, and I didn't want to take him to get it treated. He wanted to do this on his own. So he got out loose, and he is hungry. So we see that couple as they're making their way back to the car. They pause for a minute to just admire the view, and the husband's like, boy, maybe that was the best mistake we ever made, is getting lost, because look at this view. And he gets killed by the son. And he's like, yeah, all right. Oliver immediately comes in trying to save the day, and he's talking to himself saying, like, the symptoms of Leukos are provoked by being exhausted or being angry or being scared. And whenever I get into one of those things, it takes hold of me and it feels so good. But like, I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. So he starts fighting against the sun, fires an arrow off into him. George jumps into the fight, gets swatted away, and Oliver's like, screw the arrows. I am the arrow. So he just starts fighting the kid hand to hand, claw to claw. We see fangs start growing in Oliver's mouth. And as the son picks up Oliver by his throat, a loud crack rings out, and we see Norton has put his own son down. He had a gun. He fired off the shot. So Oliver goes to take care of the woman, and I guess the husband might be fine, but it doesn't seem like it. He comes up and he's like, hey, it's all right. Everything's going to be all right. But that's just what he thinks he's saying. Because of the Leukos, he's actually just growling at them. And she's like, oh my God, please stay away from us, you monster. And Oliver's like, okay, well, positives. I have always been a superhero that lived in the lap of luxury, that fights for the underman. Perhaps me being viewed as this outcast, this monster, this other, will give me a better appreciation to have my fight, to be able to learn empathy towards my fellow man. Maybe Leukos is both the diagnosis and the cure. And he walks off into the woods with George. Solid issue. Perfectly good. Why was the annual 3 months ago? They do a good job of recapping it enough that I don't think you need to know it, but it is such a shift that if you just read the last issue and then said, okay, now let's go into this one, you'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? This guy biting and all this other stuff? Like, what? Now, it does say the See Green Arrow annual whatever, but I don't know. It's a weird transition. The story itself is fine. If you're looking at it from just this issue, I like it. It's solidly made. No problems about it. So I guess I would say this one is probably like I'll give it a 7.5. I don't think it's quite up to the 8 for me, but like I could easily see myself loving this arc by the time it's done. It just needs room to grow. So 7.5. Green Lantern number 48, written by Robert Venditti, art by Billy Tan and Martin Coccolo. So last issue, big Ferris wheel went down with one of Hal's nephews on it. He seemed gravely injured. And then also the reveal of Parallax is just around out in space. So we open up in an emergency room. Nephew's name is Howard. Howard is in a coma, and his parents are just crying over him as the doctor says, like, we don't have any idea what's going to happen. Like, we're doing the best we can. We see outside of the out in the emergency room, a bunch of families are just like grieving. They're asking whether or not their loved ones are here, all this stuff. And Hal's just sitting in the corner, just like silently sobbing to himself. This woman comes up afterwards and says, hey, you were him. You're the guy that after the bomb went off, you were trying to save the Ferris wheel. And like, I saw you do that. And she basically says, yeah, my husband, he was on the Ferris wheel. Bomb didn't get him, but he had a heart attack, and doctors really can't tell me one way or the other. And she asks about Hal, and Hal's like, yeah, my nephew is, how could I have known about the bomb? Like, what was I supposed to do? And he apologizes for the husband, and she's just like, no, don't worry about it. Like, we're all in this together. Like, we're all sharing an emergency room. This is not a thing about being sorry or whatever. You're scared. Everyone here is scared. Don't worry about it. And she offers him up a little mint, and he's like, oh, thank you. And then all of a sudden over the news, reporter comes in and says, someone has taken responsibility. We just got this video. They said that they want it all shown, so here you go. And this man pops up who we saw, I think, 2 issues ago. His name is Beto Walden. And he's like, I am also going by sonar. I'm showing you all my face because I am truly not afraid. And Coast City bills itself as the city without fear. Shows what you know. I just made them scared as shit. Like, they are absolutely terrified. And the whole reason I'm doing this is because I am fighting as a freedom force for my country of Modora. And if the United Nations does not have a special session to recognize the independence of Modora, then it shall. The bombings will continue and more people will die. You have 2 days. And Hal's like, what the hell's a Modora? So the young lady's like, all right, you go get him, young man, and you tell them my husband Albert sent you. And he's like, will do. However, he doesn't start just by wildly scanning out. He decides, I need a detective. So he goes to Gotham. And he puts up a Green Lantern symbol in the sky, and in comes Jim Gordon Batman, wearing the rookie suit. And he's like, hey, this is my town. What do you think you're doing? And he's like, oh, look, I'm looking for Batman. I don't know what the hell you are, but I got to talk to him. And he's like, well, I am Batman. It's like, no, you're wearing a bunny suit. What's that all about? And it's like, yeah, well, you're looking different yourself. Anyway, please see the gift shop on your way out of town. And he's like, all right, first things first. If you're going to be Batman, people need to see your chin. That's how we know you scowl. Second off, there's no way that he would let you run around unless you were working with him. So I guess I'll trust you, and I think that he would like you to help me. And Gordon's like, all right, I'm listening. And he's like, there was an attack on Ghost City. Tell me what you know about sonar. And he's like, what if I told you let the police handle it? He's like, then clearly you don't know Batman, because Batman has never just let the police handle it. He's like, fair enough. Sonar is Beto Walden. He's the leader of this separatist army. And this is just basically exposition section where this army has existed for like the better part of several decades now, trying to get this whole thing after the Berlin Wall fell. It's consists of a bunch of people who are basically just using it to extort money out of people and then throw ragers and get drunk out in a cabin in the woods. But Beto specifically definitely believes in this cause, but he was not invited to the table. So it turns out that he made a weapon, a bomb, that was powered by sound. So the more rowdy these leaders of this quote-unquote army got, the more the bomb was charged until finally it exploded and killed them all. And then Sonar took charge of the whole operation. He basically is saying like, yeah, I'm more forward thinking. We're going to be doing that. And Modora, like I said, was just a tiny little itty bitty nation that got folded up after the Berlin Wall fell. So it's, they're doing big pandemonium for a small thing there. And so Jordan flies off, leaves Gordon behind. And he's like, all right, great. Thanks. So we cut to a training place in Kahndaq, because that was the last place that Sonar theoretically was at. And they're doing some shooting drills, doing all that, until finally the guns stop and the training guy's like, why'd y'all stop? And we see they've all been caught in Green Lantern shells, and the guns are flipped around to face the Modoran people. And the trainer's just like, all right, soldiers, you know what to do. And they all let their guns go and put their hands up behind their heads and just like take it. They're just like standing there waiting for it to happen. And the training guy calls out like, oh, the only coward here is Green Lantern. You're the only one who's scared. And he's like, yeah, you want to see how scared I am? Where's Sonar? Tell me now. And he loads up all the guns at all the guys. And like, what, you think that makes us afraid? We saw you at the carnival. You were terrified. How many people did you lose from that bomb? And he's like, don't push me. It's like, Sonar's a great man. We'll never betray him. And I'll show you how much we'll never betray him. Soldiers, state your purpose. And they all start chanting their thing of they fight for Sonar, they die for their country, free Medora, and they shout free Medora so loud it triggers another sound-activated bomb on their neck, and all of their heads explode. To which Hal's like, what in the hell is wrong with you all? And the training sergeant's like, they all know their duties, they'll never give up. Free Medora, and his head explodes too. And Hal's left just standing there holding a headless corpse. He gets so pissed off, he yells the name Sonar, punches his glove down into the ground, and all these tentacles come up and take all of the like training equipment, jeeps and whatnot, and just drag them in under the ground, leaving nothing but a void. And as Hal's sitting there, he just starts sobbing, saying, Howard, please don't die. What do I do? Cut to deep space, where planet Oa previously was. There's Parallax. And he's like, oh my god, the whole core, Oa, it's gone. I can't believe it. I'ma pull a Coast City again. And so he starts putting rocks back together to make to make Oa. And he's like, I had the power to destroy worlds. I have the power to create them again. And he's like, wait, no, hold on. I've done this before. Didn't end well, and in my planet I annihilated the Green Lantern Corps. And I understand now. I come to this universe, Oa is destroyed, people are worshipping Sinestro, but Coast City still survives, and if it's not too late, I'm going to go save it. And even if that means that the other version of Hal Jordan has to die. So he flies off to Earth to go do that. I will say in the original printed copy, not the trade paperback, they messed it up and called it Cost City instead of Coast City, but whatever, tiny things. I really do like it. I don't know. There's just something I can't put my finger on yet of like something that's holding me back from saying this is fantastic, because it is great. It's a great issue. I love setting up the Sonar character. They do a great job of making him menacing. Hal's reaction to all this of his nephew being there, it feels like a perfect mix of grief and anger. Like all that's just doing a great job. And then Sonar, I mean, they did a crap job of setting him up over the previous two issues, but like I said, this does a good job of setting him up here. So, and even the Parallax plot I'm interested in, but it does feel separate. It feels like this is one of the things that we're setting up in the last few pages so that once we deal with the Sonar stuff, the Parallax stuff will be there waiting. But yeah, I guess the only thing that's holding me back a little bit is that I don't quite feel, I don't know, the larger consequences of people must die, yes, solid, good. But the idea that like fighting Sonar is going to somehow save Howard, if they explore that level of grief to say how he's misplacing his anger here, maybe I could get behind it. But right now it just feels a bit too like disconnected. So overall, I'm still saying 7.5. It's a great issue, definitely worth a read. But I'm a little bit hesitant to get up to that 8. So take that for what you will. Midnighter number 8, written by Steve Orlando, art by David Messina. So last issue was wrapping up the whole, basically, first arc, and spoilers, it was Prometheus, but regardless, this one picks up completely separately. We are in the subways underneath New York, and just pushing his way through a subway train is a hybrid rhinoceros gorilla that gets shot through the face by this random woman who says like, ah, yes, they're top of the food chain. Meanwhile, at a nearby airport, we see that a man named Mr. Mindawe has arrived, and he's like, oh, I'm just here to tie up some loose ends. So then we go over to Midnighter, who is currently in Boston, and he's doing an interview with some guy here. I think it's Robert. And he's basically just interviewing Midnighter, and Midnighter's like, yeah, you know, here's my history. I got a fight computer in my brain. I that's my whole thing. And I recently got out of a very, very bad relationship, but I didn't know it until afterwards. And he tried to hurt me, and then I ended up killing him. And that part came easy. And Robert's like, oh, you said tried to hurt you, did he? And he says like, do I look hurt? And he's like, no, you look great. So Midnighter's basically just saying like, yeah, you know, that guy, like, it may have impacted me in some way, but I'm pushing through it. I'm doing whatever. And Robert is very clearly like, into Midnighter, to which point Robert's roommate, who's named Will, is like, yeah, you better be careful. That's a lot of his interviews end that way. So we see that he's basically a personal chef. I don't know if that's just them making fun of like how he's the cook in the house, but regardless, he's cooking stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, how's the documentary? Is there all this stuff about how it's going to help people get past like their experiences and stuff like that. And as Midnighter's about to answer, all of a sudden, a bunch of lights pop up. He's getting a call from one of his assets, and he's like, oh, okay, apparently I got to be in Rochester. I'll see you later. And so he goes through a door, and on the other side, we see that same woman who was doing hunting before is there with a man saying, oh, the sportsman's ambition takes your satisfaction seriously. We'll get something more challenging. And then they send out a cheetah is tiger mixed with like a warthog or something, and it manages to bust out of the subways up to the street above, and that's what triggered Midnighter to get called. So he jumps in and he's like, yeah, I don't know what this is going on here, it's crazy, but I'm ready to fight it. So he throws an engine block at it. It doesn't seem to do anything. There's a couple of people who, because of all the chaos, get stuck underneath a truck, and they're begging for help, but everyone's just standing by recording it on their phones, to which point a strange man comes in. I'm sure he has a name, but I'm just going to call him, he's Mindawe. He's the guy that we met before. And he lifts the truck off of the trap people, and then he immediately sees Midnighter's about to punch the saber-toothed cat thing in the face. And he's like, nope, stop, don't do that. These animals are innocent. And he's like, there's one animal, and it is tearing apart the town. To which point, Mindawe reaches out and touches the animal on the head. And it turns out that it's chimera, which means it is two animals fused together, and he defuses them into their component parts of elephant and cheetah. And he's like, yep, I have a connection to the red. That's my thing. My name is Mindawe, and I have a helmet and an elixir that allow me to create chimeras, and the elixir was synthesized by a place called Sportsman Ambition, but they don't have access to my helmet, which allows me to commune with the red, to allow like the separation afterwards and like separate things out. Therefore, since they only have the elixir half, they create these unstable, insane chimeras who go around hurting people. And I stopped the Sportsman Ambition back on my home turf, but now they're here in America, and so you want to help me take them out? And Midnighter's like, yeah, let's do it. So apparently the elephant leads them specifically where, because they are very good with memory, and he is able to communicate with them telepathically to see where they're at. So they go to an old abandoned train yard, and immediately just kick in the door and start busting heads with a bunch of people who look like, your standard 1800s, like safari hunters out in the jungles, the guy from Jumanji, that kind of thing. So they bust in, and we see that they're actually going through and like release a few more of these chimeras to attack. And we see one of them is what ends up being a lion fused with an armadillo, but it looks a hell of a lot more like a lion fused with a spider because of how crazy long and spindly the legs are. So it starts attacking Midnighter, and he's like, all right, look, I'm used to killing things. That's kind of my thing. But if I have to only put these things down gently, I will. And so he jumps around the lion armadillo, taps a nerve ending, a sleep point, and ends up putting it to sleep, where a guy is then waiting with a gun trained in Midnighter's head. He's like, haha, anything to say now, you smart ass? And he's like, you really think you could sneak up on me? I've got the fight computer in my head. I can see it. I can move faster than your eye can even move. All that's going to happen before you can pull the trigger. You ready? And then immediately Midnighter like shatters the gun with his head and moves so quickly around this guy that he's got his hand around his throat before he even has time to blink. So at that point, Mindawe steps up and he's like, hey, this guy is yours. What do you want to do with him? And he's like, I've got an idea. So he lands in Mindawe's hand, and he's like, you think you can decide the fate of a beast? Like, you're any better? We're all beasts. We're all part of the animal kingdom. So let's see how you like it. And there's a passing by mosquito that he then uses his elixir helmet to fuse together this man and the mosquito. And it's horrific. It is terrifying looking. But regardless, Midnighter reaches out and like immediately grabs it in his hand and is about to squash it. Mandalar's like, no, don't do that. We have to let nature take its course. And he's like, fair enough. And he uses his fight computer to look around, and he's like, yoink, and he yoinks off one of the mosquito's wings and then sends it flying, to which a bat comes down and immediately eats the guy. Horrific, though, top to bottom. So at that point, Mandalar's like, oh, well, my friends here are sore, but they are alive. Thank you for your help. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, the hurt never need to worry when the hurters are on borrowed time around Midnighter. And he's like, oh, that's cute. You got a little thing going for you. Anyway, do you really think that death is the end of something? And he's like, yeah, I do. But it does when I do it, but still disgusting regardless. So either way, he's like, all right, well, look, I got a door here. Do you want to go? Like, we can get going if you'd like. We then cut over to Marina Lucas, who was in the last arc, one of the first people who was introduced as an asset of Midnighters. She's getting out of jail. And as she gets out, Midnighter's there waiting, and he's like, I told you I'd be here. Thought you'd need a ride. And she's like, oof, you look terrible. Worse than I remember. And she's like, yeah, well, had a rough life. So at that point, he gets another call, and she's like, really? Yeah, you're leaving me in the parking lot? You're still an ass. And he's like, sorry, this shouldn't take long. So turns out she got brought in by Susan, who it turns out this was a trap for. The moment he arrives, she's got a gun trained on him, and they are actually in Spiral, or some version of Spiral's HQ, where Helena is sitting there waiting, and she's like, hey, yeah, you got this whole network, one-way contact, but we slipped an agent in there, no big deal. And Midnighter's like, okay, so what, we're gonna like fight now? That's what we're doing? But he's like, she's basically says like, no, if you'll remember during your last little thing here, there was the Perdition pistol, and it crossed my desk. It's one of yours, and one of your first cases after you walked out of the gardener, you brought it in. Someone took it from me, and I want it back. You want it back. Let's work together to get this thing going. So if it is Perdition pistol is such a big deal, you got to trust me on this. Do you think you can do that? And he's like, you got stones. I'm not going to work for you. We're going to work together. I'll work with you. Got it? And we see that the very first thing that they are suspecting has taken the Perdition pistol, as we saw in the last issue, actually did do it, is the Suicide Squad. I have said this numerous times over the course of this show, and if I were to take this show deeper into Rebirth, I would be saying it there as well. It is, in my opinion, the laziest storytelling thing in the DC universe is to have the one issue of let's meet up and fight the Suicide Squad, because it's just so basic. It's so annoyingly like, of course we have a book that's nothing but villains, and they work under the control of Amanda Waller, so that we could technically say that they can go do anything at any point, and a superhero would be justified to go fight them. Now, we set this one up. We did say Deadshot stole the pistol last issue, so like it's there, but it's still like, I'm so tired of these like, oh yeah, next issue, fighting the Suicide Squad. Like, do you think people care that much about the Suicide Squad? Considering this is before the Suicide Squad movie came out, like just barely, yeah, probably. But either way, the issue itself is fine. I'm curious if we're going to get back to that Roberts stuff. I'm also curious if we're going to stay around with this Mindawe character, because I really like him. I like his power set. And with Animal Man being gone, it would be nice to have someone who has that same sort of connection to the Red. So, yeah, I mean, it's a whole bunch of ifs, but I like this issue more than I dislike it. I guess I'd say it gets at least a 7 from me. But if just don't do the Suicide Squad anymore. Stop it, please. Get some help. Batman Beyond number 8, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Bernard Chang. So last issue, Matt, Terry's younger brother, has abandoned Gotham. He's run off and he's headed out towards Metropolis, and Tim has no idea where he's gone, but he knows he's disappeared. Something I failed to mention, that on retrospect, there's only one panel that shows it, so I don't feel that bad for missing it. but he has a Green Lantern ring. Like an actual honest-to-God Green Lantern ring, which came from Green Lantern's severed arm, which is the one he brought into that shop earlier on. So, picking up with this, Tim is looking all over the city trying to find Matt. We see the onlookers down on the ground of Gotham are like, oh my god, it's Batman. Everyone take a picture, sign an autograph. And we see that he was talking to Barbara, and the last shot that they had of Matt was going into a tailor shop in Burnside, and the camera feed cut off before he exited, so they don't even know if he ever left the building. So he goes in, and as soon as he gets in, he's like, oh, geez, this place has been torn apart. What's going on? And then he gets hit, or almost hit, by a bunch of lightning. And he's like, whoa, who the hell are you? And he's like, my name's Rewire. We fought before, unless, of course, you're not the real Batman. And so he keeps on trying to attack Tim, and he's like, look, I don't care about you, man. I just want to know, there was a kid, Matt, what did you do with him? And Rewire's like, I don't know, like, I just came in here to settle up. That there was a kid in here yesterday. And then Tim pops out, punches Rewire in the face, just being like, where is he? He's like, it's not my problem, but like, he wanted to scandalize her. If you want to find out why, you're gonna have to check the computer, but I've rigged this whole place to blow in 10 seconds, so you better look fast, as he runs out the door. And Tim's just like, all right, I can either chase after him or find Matt. Clearly it's find Matt. So he pulls up the computer, and he's just kind of running by intuition. He doesn't know how the computer works, but he starts going through it, and eventually he finds a scan of the cybernetic arm of Green Lantern after he got Brother Eye-ified, and he's like, oh, wait a minute, all Brother Eye tech has to be reported. So what was Matt doing with this? What was this all about? But then the place starts blowing up. He's like, all right, well, time to get out of here. So he flies out. We then cut over to Matt, who is walking this highway. All the cars are like pushed off to the side. There's craters everywhere. And he's like, oh man, I'm an idiot. I thought I'd be there a lot faster. I thought there'd be a place to refill water. I'm almost out. I'm in bad shape. And he hears a bunch of voices coming up the road, the opposite direction. So he hides underneath one of the cars. And as people are coming up, walking by, they're like, oh, there's a kid. Oh my God. Hey, kid, what's going on? And like some of the people in the party are like, he might be dangerous. Don't help him, whatever. And everyone's else like, it's a kid. Come on, we got to help him. So they get him out, and they're just like, hey, what's your name? And he's like, oh, it's Matt. I'm heading for Metropolis. And they're like, why? And they give him some water, and they're like, that place sucks, kid. Were you coming from Gotham? Gotham is so much better. We're all headed to Gotham ever since it showed back up on the maps. Like, yeah, we got to go there. And he's like, what? No, Metropolis is the greatest city in the world. And they're like, eventually, like at some point in the past, yeah, but not anymore. There's some weird stuff happening there. You should turn back. And he's like, no, I can't. I got to go find this thing. So then we have a flashback as being told by Micron. And it's basically the day the Justice League fell. And at that point, it consists of Micron, Warhawk, Barda, a.k.a. if you saw the episode of Batman Beyond that was set in with the Justice League, it's that one. And they're all fighting against Brother Eye's stuff in Europe. And as they're taking apart like the bigger monsters, whatever, they feel like they have the upper hand. Warhawk is like, oh yeah, we did it. We need to wrap this up. We're good. And then all of a sudden he gets impaled from the back and starts getting brought into Brother Eye's super intelligence. And then Barda, as she's yelling out, saying like, oh no, Rex, she gets stabbed as well. She starts getting taken over. And Micron is about to get stabbed himself, but he shrinks down to subatomic size just fast enough where he gets knocked out, but he doesn't get stabbed and brought into the collective. So when he ends up waking up, he finds out that the entire league has been turned. The city is just on fire and like nothing is left. And turns out he's telling all this to Tim as they are building, I think, up a barricade, or at least cleaning up some stuff at the gate of like Gotham. There's a huge wall around it. And as they're saying that, it's like, okay, well, Matt's gone missing, and it has something to do with Green Lantern's ring, because I think he went down and grabbed that in the final battle. But their conversation is cut off because outside the wall of Gotham, there's a huge crowd of people there, at least like 1,000 people who have set up camp, and they're all trying to get into Gotham. And the guards are standing there saying like, nope, we've already got our people inside we need to care for. No one except for Gothamites are allowed inside of Gotham. And they're like, but like everywhere else sucks, and you're the only place that's like any sort of good or like functioning society at all. And they're like, exactly why we need to keep you all out. So we see some guards on top saying like, oh yeah, we got to consider them hostiles until we can close the gate and get this all figured out. And Tim comes up and is like, what are you doing? The war is over. We should be helping our fellow man. And a door opens up behind him and out steps the mayor of Gotham in this future, who is Luke Fox. And Luke's like, yep, I've been talking to Barbara. She's the commissioner after all. We never knew where you went, Tim. It's good to see you. And he's like, yeah, okay, Luke, whatever. The Batwing I know wouldn't do this to all those other people. And he's like, a lot changed while you were gone, man. We need to be able to care for our own city, because think about it like this. If we let in these people, there's like 1,000 of them. Theoretically, if we could deal with them, what about the next 1,000 and the next 2,000 after that? Like, eventually the whole system will end up collapsing. If I let them in, everyone loses. And Tim points out, like, we might be all that's left in, like, the whole world. And he's just like, yeah, and that's why we need to maintain it. And then for some reason, one of the guards, like, chuckles to himself. Like, nothing queued it up, but the guy's like, oh, yeah, well, we talk about how hard it is to get in, but it's pretty easy to get out. Like, I saw a kid jump out here and grab hold of a trash truck, and he looked like he was making his way to Metropolis. And immediately Tim's like, oh, that's Matt. Right, I'm on that plot. So we then cut back over to Matt. He's listening to his little phone thing about how Metropolis is this fantastic city, the golden city of tomorrow. And he's entering in to like the suburbs of it, and he's able to see it on the horizon. He's like, doesn't look that golden. Looks pretty crap. But the thing says that one of the landmarks is the Watchtower, home of the Justice League. And he's like, oh, that's still here. I can go check that out. So he starts making his way over, and we see that there is a group of 3 people who are watching from behind, and they're like, why does the kid want to go into Metropolis? Like, no one's wanted to go into Metropolis forever. What do you think we should do, boss? And we see the 3 of them are all animal humanoids. 2 of them are gorillas / apes. One of them is a tiger, and the boss is the tiger who says, like, well, let's pay attention to him. He's got to have a good reason to want to come in here, and the big boss is going to want to know what it is. So art is amazing. In case Bernard Chang is listening again, art is a 20 out of 10. Fantastic. Cannot complain. I like this arc. I'm down with it. Again, I said this in last issue. I feel like it was kind of just growing pains of getting out of the shadow of Future's End. Now that we're done with that, now that it's like, okay, we've got our own universe we can set up here, we're playing with the Justice League that was in the animated cartoon, we're doing all that stuff. I like it. I think that this is good forward motion. I guess my only critique is I didn't pick up as strongly that Matt had an actual like functional Green Lantern ring, and I don't think the book really did that good of a job of addressing that either. So my only real critique is the tiny one, because it obviously rectifies that right away here. So I'll say, with the art being a 20 out of 10, 7.5. It's a solid book. It's fine. It's good. It's very good. It's just not great. Telos number 4, written by Jeff King, art by Carlo, Pagulayan, and Igor, Vitorino. So last issue, I don't know. I don't care. It was a whole lot of stuff and like some double crossing and like whatever. But I remember the big thing was Brainiac has teamed up with Computo, and they're both going to fight Telos. Oh, shock. So this issue picks up with that, and Computer's just like, haha, Brainiac has kept me here, and he has placed the Rosetta Stone of Time into your chest, so we're just going to kill you and take that, and you can't beat us both. And Telos is like, oh, you betray me, Brainiac? I thought we had a deal. And Computer's like, it was a ruse, you rube. And he's like, yeah, no, Computo knows Techni's mission to destroy his backup site in space, so I just ended their revolution, and I'm going to get the thing I want here as well. So it's literally just a thing where Computer's like, all right, well, I've upgraded my drones. They're all going to fight you now because Brainiac has basically given me the ability to take on something at the same level as him. So drones go in and attack Telos, and he just immediately starts fighting against them. Calls down to Techni and the rest of the crew, who are currently fighting a huge drone army down at the main section. I don't know, the entrance to the building. And Validus was brought back from the dead, quote unquote, and he's part of this fight as well. He looks way different. Not great, but still way different. And so it's like, all right, well, he's here. We're going to have to put this virus in or do whatever. And he's like, all right, I'll do whatever I can. But Techne needs to survive or else my data that she carries will be lost. So he calls out to Captain Comet and says, hey, you got to help defend Techne or whatever. And Brainiac's like, oh, no, that's not going to work. I anticipate your every move, and I'm stopping all of your portals from working as well. So I can stop you because I am the one who gave you your powers to begin with. So the fight continues on, and Telos basically runs in, starts punching Brainiac, and he's basically saying like, oh, he's willing to fight against me and Techne, who is his own offspring. It's almost as if he actually believes it. And we see Computo joins in the fight as well. And basically Telos is saying like, maybe I miscalculated. Maybe this isn't a double cross where he's pretending to be with Computo, but he's actually with me. Maybe this is a triple cross where like he's actually with Computo and he's betrayed me. What if I have, oh God, what then? So we see back down in the main fight. As far as I could tell, it literally just takes like a single shot as Validus comes up and starts attacking Captain Comet. Like they just fire off a bunch of gunshots and then they say, yeah, someone blew up its cyborg implants. That's all it took. So back in the main room, we see all of like the screens and Validus and whatnot. They all get a little bit shaky and blurry and whatever. And Computo starts yelling out like, well, why are all my screens dark? I'm running blind here. Someone get them back. And Brainiac's like, yeah, don't worry about it. Validus, if he was ever supposed to... If he ever went offline, he was supposed to blow up in a way that would take out like 10 city blocks. If he's offline right now, all of the people who are a threat to you are totally dead. No need to worry about them. And Computer's like, you sure, man? Like, it's most of the people there on the planet in that 10 block radius are dead, but like, I'm cool with that as long as they're all dead. And Brainiac's like, yes, it's a necessary sacrifice. So be it. So at that point, Telos is like, oh, I can't believe he did that. Like, that's Validus wiped out off my data. And so he calls out, he's like, Techne, did you survive from the explosion? And she's like, what explosion? Validus just dropped dead, as did all the other drones. Like, we didn't do anything. We just stand here. And so Captain K-Rot's on the ship, and he's like, all right, well, let's hop in the ship and get out of here. Like, no reason not to get out of here while we can. So at that point, they wonder specifically what would have happened. Like, what was the cause of this? And we cut back into the room, and Brainiac's yelling out for Computo, like, look, Telos is weak. Go fight him, Computo. And Computo's like, yeah, all right, I'm going to go beat him up. So he goes in, he starts swiping at Telos. Telos just shoves his knives into Computo and cuts him in half. And he's like, never threaten my family. And then all of a sudden there's a thudding behind a big door nearby. And it turns out Computo just backed himself up into a different body. However, it's not the size of Telos. It's 3 stories tall. So now he's fighting against a giant Computo. K-Rot and the rest of the crew go up into orbit. They're going to meet up, I guess, in the satellite, or they're going to destroy the satellite. I'll be honest, they just say Computer satellite is dead ahead, and it's holding 1,000 backup bodies, so we got to take care of that. Comet's passing this information along to Telos, letting them know they're in position and all that. And then as Computo starts going after Telos and start really laying the smackdown, he's like, yeah, I can do this all day. I'm gonna find your family, and I'm gonna rip out your inner self. I'm gonna make you watch as I kill them and then kill you, and like I'm gonna do all this horrible stuff. And then as Computo's coming over top of him, just being like, how does it feel knowing that because of me, all of your hopes and dreams die with you? And then Telos goes, now. And then Brainiac throws a bunch of cables into Computo, which implants a virus immediately. And Brainiac just kind of does his thing of like, of course I was just using you. Until my virus pushes through you, you're completely incapable of moving. And that's where Telos jumps in, performs a Shoryuken, and Computo is dead. Now he's about to back up into another body, but up in space, they blow up the satellite that holds all of his backup bodies. So all that's left is a computer left literally on a computer screen. And he's like, no, I will destroy. This is not the end for me. And Telos breaks the computer and Brainiac says, die. So that's the end of that. Everyone meets up. They all get in one place. And Brainiac's like, all right, cool. Give me the drive, the memory stick that has all the records of the timelines and the multiverse and everything else. It's all encrypted. I'll plug it in and I'll figure out where your family is. And he's like, cool, where are they? And he goes, dunno. File is corrupted. And he's like, excuse me? I saw her download the data. And it's like, yeah. But like somewhere during all the fighting, it got messed up. So yeah, I don't know where your family is. And Telos is like, Stealth, could you put a cloaking device around us real quick so Brainiac can't see? And he immediately, technically, just like, look, maybe the data never existed. Maybe Brainiac's just playing you. Like maybe this was all just a colossal waste of time. And Telos is like, shut up. Look, shut up. I don't want to feel your pity. I had to try to find my family. At least something good came out of this. And I want to be clear that you are the chance for the future of this planet. Whatever Brainiac's plans here are, because of course he's playing us. Whatever his plans are, I need you to understand something. You were told that you were a 10th level intellect. You are not. You are a 12th level. You are Brainiac's equal. You can use that to defeat him. Okay, Stealth, put us back in normal. And Brainiac's like, what was that? Why'd you do that? And he's like, oh, I got emotional. I didn't think you'd like to see that. And Brainiac's like, ew, yeah, gross. Don't want to see that. So Telos starts walking off, and they're all just like, wait, where are you going? Don't you want to... We got a little team going on here. We could really use a heavy hitter like you. And he's like, oh, just ask the telepath. She always knows. So Telos just goes out into space, and it turns out that part of Brainiac's plan was that he was going to offer up Techni to the Citadel in order to use that as a bargaining chip to basically get control of Coccolo again. He just wanted control of the planet himself. So Telos goes out and he immediately starts fighting against all of the Citadel forces that are coming out. And they're just like, oh, shall we prepare to fire, General? And he says, yes, behold while I deliver the answer to Telos. And we see Telos is facing down against an entire armada as it approaches. I said it last issue, I lost the plot on this book. I will admit I got the plot back just a little bit here, but that's only because it is surprisingly more straightforward than I thought it was going to be. I think the biggest issue was I couldn't tell where allegiances lied last issue. And obviously that was intentional, but like there's a difference between playing coy with it, between trying to make it a mystery to be solved of who's doing what, and then just genuinely feeling like you're misunderstanding the story. I had the latter feeling. So getting that resolved and saying, here's where everybody lies, I feel better. That being said, we've got 2 issues left. We wrapped up the main computer plot. I don't know what the hell we're going to be doing. The next issue has Hal Jordan Parallax on the front. So maybe it has something to do with that. I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. This issue is a 5.5. Not a fan. Batman and Robin Eternal, number 14, written by Snyder and Tynion, art by Fernando Blanco and Roger Robinson. So we open up in Prague all those years ago. Batman and Robin are in the Batmobile speeding towards a chemical facility. And as they're approaching, Robin's like, should we slow down? Batman goes, nope. And they just crash through the wall where there's a bunch of people inside working on whatever stuff. Batman puts down a fog cover and they immediately start beating up all the cronies and goons. And Robin points out, okay, we're here for Scarecrow. But this was like really obvious. Scarecrow made it super obvious and that he was here. He's been laying low for so long. Why come out now? And Batman's like, oh, well, you went and attacked him. So maybe he's speeding up his whole end game, whatever his plan was. Regardless, let's take him out. And Robin's like, okay, but it definitely feels like he wants us to be here. And then inside Batman's cowl, he hears, hello, Batman, it's Scarecrow. I've hacked into your headset, but not Robin. So don't recognize that don't make it obvious I'm talking to you. We need to talk. there was a bomb at the top of this building that I set up. It's the same design I used in Gotham. I know Robin knows how to take that apart. Send him up there to disarm it so that me and you can talk in private. And Batman's like, why would I do that? And it's like, well, otherwise the bomb is actually going to go off and it will also kill you and I on top of all these other people in the city. So, yeah. And Batman's like, okay, Robin, there's a bomb on top of the building. Go and defuse it. It's the same design as the one in Gotham. You know how to do that. And Robin's like, righto, boss, I'm on it. Also, how did you know that? And what aren't you telling me? And he's like, no, don't worry about it. I'm not gaslighting you. Get out of here. So we cut to now in the nursery. Obviously, last issue we left off with Mother saying there was a nuke. So Harper's kind of freaking out about that. Grayson's like, hey, calm down. We just need to get back to our jet. And David Kane's there like, no, we already disassembled your jet. You're stuck here. You're all going to die here. Grayson's like, okay, well then help us. Mother's going to blow you up too. That's clearly a betrayal. And he's like, what are you telling? That's not a betrayal. I would never betray Mother. Cassandra then kicks the weapon out of his hand and joins the side over on the bats. And basically says like, no, everything Mother does is a test. It's always to show that we can like fight for ourselves, fend for ourselves to make a better world around us. That's what Mother's whole thing is. And he's like, what would you possibly get out of killing all those children then? And he's like, they were imperfect. I was made by Mother's hand, so I am perfect. I'm Mama's good little boy. And then he throws a throwing dart over at Harper's face, which I think Cassandra blocks using her hand. But regardless, Grayson gets into a fight with David Kane. And all these drones Kane has are sicked on the rest of them. So as Cassandra's fighting off drones, Harper's like, hey, if there's a computer that might control the nukes thing, let me at it. I can hack into it. I can find the big red stop button. So they start running down hallways. Kane sends the drones to follow them. And we're left with the fight between Kane and Grayson. And Grayson's basically like, you are insane for following Mother so devoutly even when she's trying to have you killed. And Kane's just like, oh yeah? Batman did the same thing to you. Let's look at the facts here. You were handcrafted to be this sidekick by Batman, and like you follow his orders and all that other stuff, but here's the difference. Mother never lies to me. She might have these insanely genocidal plans, but she never lies. Batman lies to you all the time. And Grayson's like, you don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, oh yeah? Remember when you were fighting Scarecrow here all those years ago? Or Prague, I should say. Remember when you were doing that? Turns out Batman was lying to you then. He wasn't fighting Scarecrow. Scarecrow was his ally. And then we cut back to the flashback. We see Scarecrow's got a gun trained on Batman just to kind of like keep his distance. And he's like, hey, cool, great, glad you made it, glad we could talk. And Batman's like, right, tell me everything you know about Mother. And he's like, yeah, she's insane. Like, worse than me, because my whole thing is I'm a doctor. I just want to research fear. But, like, the government won't let me use human test subjects. And I don't think you understand that, like, you may view me as a supervillain or whatever, but my work is going to advance the field of like dealing with fear response and stuff by centuries if I'm allowed to do whatever I want. So yeah, I went to Mother looking to be able to use human test subjects, and what she wanted in response was a different version of my formula that isn't just fear, but it's a trauma toxin. It will traumatize its people, and like to the extent that it will scar their brain in a similar way that advanced trauma would. That's a bridge too far for me. And Batman goes, are you serious? Like, that's your limit? And he's like, yeah, because if they're that traumatized and she uses it on a wide enough scales it seems like she wants to use it on, everyone's just going to be an unfeeling husk. And what use is that to discovering fear if I can't strike fear into them anymore? So, yeah, no. She's dangerous. I don't think I'd be able to escape without your help, so throw a few punches, throw me in Arkham, and put me in protective custody, and, like, I promise I'll go quietly. And Batman's like, no. And Scarecrow's like, all right, plan B. Robin is still working on that bomb up there. I have a remote detonator. I can just kill him and everyone else too, unless you get me out of this. So you do what I say. And he's like, no. See, Robin is up there working on the bomb, but it's not loaded. It's not going to detonate, even with that detonator, because I stopped by this morning and disarmed it before any of this took place. And Scarecrow's like, what? Then why did we do any of this? Why were you waiting so long? And he's like, and he grabs Scarecrow by the neck and he's just like, I was waiting for you to be useful. What actually happened, I skipped over a little bit, when Mother approached recently to Scarecrow, he says, I want a full psychological workup on Batman. And Scarecrow reasons out that this is because Mother is scared. Mother thinks that Batman's getting too close, and he's like, the walls are closing in. I know she'll ice me as soon as it happens. You got to get me out of here. But Batman says, yeah, you told me she needs a profile on me. You're going to give it to her, but you're going to give her a profile in the exact specific way I tell you to. And only then will I let you get to Arkham. And Scarecrow's like, Dad, I don't want to play with her no more, though. She is ultra dangerous. Can we make any other sort of deal here? And Batman throws him to the ground and is just like, oh, we're not making deals. You work for me now. So we cut back to present day. Cassandra's fighting against drones as Harper's trying to hack into the computer, and she just can't do it. It's a completely locked out system, and she starts getting existential, thinking like, oh God, if I die, Harper's going to be, or not Harper, Cullen is going to be, like he's going to need a sister, and that sister's going to be Stephanie Brown. His music taste is going to suck. And so Cassandra comes over and starts like calming her down and saying that they'll live. And Harper's like, hey, look, Cassandra, I want you to know I don't think of you as a monster. I'm sorry if you ever thought that I think that way. I know you killed those people. And she's like, no. And she's like, no, I saw you do it. Like that, I know that happened, but I know it wasn't you. Like you were forced into doing that. Regardless, I'm glad I met you. And so they share a little hug. They get surrounded by more drones. And they're like, all right, well, if we're going to die, let's die kicking drone ass. So they do a few out, but then all of a sudden, all the rest of the drones just fall to the ground. And it's like, well, I don't think that was us. David Kane stumbles in, falls to the ground, bloodied and beaten, followed by Grayson. And Grayson's like, yeah, he had the deactivator on him, not for the nuke, but for the drones. He kept on trying during our whole fight to say, oh, look how bad Batman is, that Batman like isn't perfect or whatever. But like, we all know that. He's a kid who's trying to get vengeance for his parents' death. He's a messed up dude, and we all know that. Like, what's he trying to prove? And then Grayson like collapses, and he's like, yeah, there's a jet downstairs. We should probably go get in that. So they get in the jet. They outrun the nuke. They've got David Kane with them. So Harper asks, where to next? And Grayson's like, all right, we're going to Spiral headquarters. No more secrets. We're getting to the bottom of this. So that's where the issue ends. I really like the flashback stuff. I like the Scarecrow stuff. Just the way it looks. I don't know if that is a different artist doing that, because there are two artists here. Maybe that's the split between them, but like it looks great. And then on top of it, I like the explanation here of like, obviously we knew Scarecrow was kind of being not forced into this, but he's being strung along, and obviously Mother and Orphan wanted him off the playing field at a certain point. I like the fact that he's smart enough to realize like he's at the end of his rope and Batman's the only one who can get him out of this. So also I really like the idea of Batman just kind of, again, loosely, lightly, just messing around with Dick, giving him little half-truths and gaslighting him a little bit, because it does play to this larger question of how far did Bruce go to take down Mother? Like how far did his breaking his rules and like going against Robin here play out? Obviously I don't think he actually like killed anyone. That would be way too far, but they're at least playing with the idea and I like it. So yeah, I'm going to say this is honestly probably a solid 8. Between the art, between the writing, I think this is a fantastic one. Next issue looks like we're dealing with more of the Tim and Azrael stuff, so might get a little bit more dicey there. But this whole bit of being in the nursery and like the flashbacks and the sculptor and all that, I've been down with most all of this. It's very well written. I'm super into it. So kudos. Let's see where we go from here. And that's it. That is all the comics that were put out by DC Comics this January 6th, 2016. And honestly, don't have a lot more to say. There is one thing I want to make you aware of if you are watching this as it comes out on the YouTube channel, because there were no DC Comics being released for the previous week of real time, like right now. Comics from the Multiverse, my sister show, does not have a new episode out. So for anybody who's watching this, for the rest of the week, it's going to be nothing but my old cut-up episodes. And right now we are smack dab in the middle of Villains Month. So all of those ones that were focused specifically around Batman's villains, Superman's villains, yada yada, you remember it. Be sure to check those out. It's been getting a decent amount of views because I think people are just finding it separately, but it's always good to get a reminder of what the hell are these villains actually supposed to be doing in this continuity. I guarantee you Jokers is not what you remember it being. So all that said and done, what do we got coming up next week? Next week, we have 11 comics coming out. Pretty standard stuff, although two things worth noting here. First, in alphabetical order, we have Batman, Superman, Catwoman, Constantine the Hellblazer, Earth 2 Society, Gotham Academy, New Suicide Squad, Red Hood and Arsenal, and Starfire. Then we also have Batman and Robin Eternal as the weekly, but then there are two more titles on top of that. The first is Robin War #2, wrapping up the entire Robin War storyline, which I feel like it's been 3 weeks since we had the last one. Really not great timing on that, guys. You should have made that a little bit tighter in terms of the release schedule. And the other part is Green Lantern Corps Edge of Oblivion. If you were paying attention at the start of the DCU, there was Green Lantern Lost Army. This, I believe, is picking up on the exact same plot threads. Although, if I remember correctly, it's Tom Taylor writing, and I think Cullen Bunn wrote the original. So who knows if it's going to be the same storyline that was always intended or what's going on with that, but that's what we're doing. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Anyway, if you have any comments that you would like to leave on all the comics I talked about today, last week, any week at all, you can go ahead and leave them in the section down beneath this YouTube video specifically dedicated to comments. I know, it's weird. They made that. However, if you're listening this into a separate area, like the audio-only listeners, go to YouTube. What are you doing? Why are you on audio only? But you can also go to Discord, our subreddit, or our Patreon. Links to those are all in the description, or show notes, or whatever it is you call it on your weird audio sites. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week, and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.